Welcome to the Hopeful Divorce. I'm Hope, your family law friend. After working in family law firms for many years and watching thousands of divorces play out, I've learned some things about what does and doesn't work, and I'm here to share.
This question is from the Divorce Women subreddit. My ex won't agree on alimony and custody. I, 39 female, separated from my husband, 42 male, at the start of the year, and we just started mediation. Before the separation, I used an online calculator that said he'd be paying me $1,600 a month in alimony, which seemed fair to me. He makes about twice what I do, and I took time out from the workforce while our kids were little. Since the separation, we've been nesting. When we're not with the kids, he's staying with his parents, while I first rented a room and then a month ago moved to a place that has enough space for my kids to be with me once we stop nesting, which we're planning to do when school ends. He's planning to buy out my equity and stay in the house. When I first mentioned alimony to my ex, he claimed that I did the calculations wrong and he would only have to pay me $850 a month. So I knew we weren't entirely on the same page, but I figured that it would get sorted out in mediation. Now, though, he's telling me that he won't have to pay any alimony at all because I'm living with my boyfriend. Sharing the cost with my boyfriend, whose housing situation was also in flux, was the only way that I could afford a big enough house for the kids while still being able to have a little life. Plus, my ex is going back on our parenting plan and saying we should keep nesting because he doesn't want the kids to be around my boyfriend, even though my boyfriend is someone the kids already know and like, though they don't know that we're dating yet. He won't be able to get out of paying alimony, right? And can he make us keep nesting or prevent me from having the kids? He's already going to have 50% custody, since otherwise the kids would have to change schools. But now I'm worried that he might try to get more. I just want a fair agreement, and I thought we were going to be on the same page about that. But now I'm worried. Oh, this question is a very common scenario. This happens a lot. At the beginning of the separation process, a couple will do some research online and find an online calculator that'll help you figure out child support or help you figure out alimony. And you know what? Using those resources is a great idea. There is a lot of good legal information available online, but you have to be careful. It's very easy to get it wrong. First, you need to make sure that that online calculator is for your jurisdiction. A lot of times people will make a mistake and use one that is not in their province or in their state. Also, there can be some nuance to it. The numbers in the calculator might just give you the base amount, but sometimes, depending on where you live, it can make a difference in, like, for example, if the other spouse is paying for health insurance for the children, that might get credited and it might change the amount of child support. It's not like that everywhere. It's only like that in some places. And your online calculator might not include all of those details and all of those things. So using those resources is a really good idea in general, but you can't count on them to be 100% accurate. Where this woman went wrong is she did the calculations online, she assumed that it was correct, and she made a major decision, a major financial decision, assuming that that was how much money she was going to get. It's just an estimate. And the fact that her husband said, I think it's only supposed to be $850, that was a huge red flag, and she should have slowed down and not signed a lease because they were nowhere near each other. Now, if he had said, I think you're off by about $100, well, that would have been different. He was saying that she was off by almost 50%. That's huge. And so she should not have entered into a lease agreement on this, stayed renting a room until they had more solid numbers worked out in mediation. Now, this also illustrates how important it is to talk to a lawyer. Her question, she says, he won't be able to get out of paying alimony, right? Well, maybe. He may not have to pay her alimony. Here in Ontario, we call it spousal support, and in a lot of places in the U.S., it's called spousal support. He may not have to pay it if she is partnered and living with a new partner. It depends. Here in Ontario, there is compensatory spousal support, which is part of the calculation for spousal support is for the fact that she stayed home and didn't work for several years when their children were younger. So she's entitled to some compensatory spousal support for that time. But she may not be entitled to as much spousal support because she's already got a new partner. The whole purpose for spousal support when it was originally created was to help someone until they were in a new marriage or a new financially supportive situation. And so if she's already newly partnered, she may not. It's very important that this woman talk to a lawyer as soon as possible and find out what the laws are in her jurisdiction and find out how having a new partner will impact it. Here in Ontario, she probably would still have some spousal support, but she would need to talk to a lawyer to be sure. The other question was, can he keep her from having time with the kids at her new place? The short answer to that is no. In general, the courts allow parents to decide who they can be around when it's their parenting time. If you want to introduce your new partner to your kids, you are legally allowed to do that for the most part whenever you want to. Now, some people in their separation agreements will put in their agreement that they agree not to introduce a new partner until it's a serious relationship and they have been dating exclusively for at least 6 months or something like that. Like sometimes people will have that as an agreement, but the law doesn't usually require that. And it's also hard to enforce those agreements. Having that in your separation agreement is more, rather than it being something where you're trying to get the court to order contempt. It's more just a written statement of saying this is what we agree to do because it's what's best for our children. It's probably not something that the courts will get involved in. And so unless this new boyfriend of hers has a conviction for child abuse or a conviction for, child molestation or something awful like that, unless there is something very serious in his past that, makes it clear that he could be a danger to the children, for the most part, it's up to mom if the kids are around her new boyfriend or not. It is not common that I've ever seen for a court to enforce a nesting agreement. A nesting agreement where the children stay in one place and the parents go back and forth. Those are somewhat common, particularly in the early stages of divorce and separation. But usually, most of the time, you end up having two homes in the long run. It's usually a temporary solution. It tends to be better for the children to have two separate homes and two separate identities. Now, they may stay with dad in the matrimonial home and have only part-time with mom in her new home. That's also very common. But I would be very surprised if a court would order that mom had to stick with a nesting agreement. The courts generally don't order those types of things that I've ever seen on any case I've ever read or worked on. So I think the lesson in this question for this mom is that doing your own research is important, but it's also important to get it validated. And it's also important that when you assume things are going to work out, that you get some sort of temporary agreement. You know, she could have gotten her ex to maybe agree to a certain amount of spousal support on a temporary basis until they reach agreement on everything else. And, that doesn't have to be drafted by lawyers to be legally binding. They can come up with the agreement themselves. They can just write it up themselves and say, this is temporary, this is not permanent, but this is what we're doing for now. Our goal is to, share custody of the children, and I'm paying this much in spousal support for now until we reach an agreement on how it's going to be, moving forward. You can do that yourselves, and that's okay. You don't have to have lawyers doing everything, but there is an in between between having no lawyers and just doing it all yourself, and then having lawyers do everything. And using mediation like this couple is to work it out sounds like a really good path. I think that they sound like they can work things out. They may not be in agreement on everything, but a good mediator will help them address these concerns and work out something that can work for everybody. Taking a quick pause in today's episode to remind you this podcast is built around your questions. If you're navigating divorce, separation, property division, child support, custody, co-parenting, blended families, or anything in between, you don't have to figure it out alone. Chances are, if you're wondering about something, someone else is too. You can submit your questions anytime through my website at hopefuldivorce.com. Whether it's a big, complicated situation or a simple, what does this legal term mean, or why does this happen this way? All questions are welcome. I read every submission, and your question could be featured in an upcoming episode to help not just you, but others going through similar experiences. So if something's been on your mind, send in your question. Let's keep the conversation moving forward. This question is from the Divorce Men subreddit, When to Settle. I'm in the middle of a divorce and trying to decide whether to settle or go to trial, and I'm having a hard time figuring out what's actually fair versus what I might be giving up just to avoid a fight. My attorney is pretty focused on risk and keeps reminding me that outcomes in court can be unpredictable. I get that, but it just leaves me feeling like I don't have a clear sense of whether the current offer is reasonable or if I'd likely do better or worse if I pushed it to trial. For context, this is a medium to high asset situation with kids involved, and there are a few sticking points around asset division and ongoing financial support. Nothing totally extreme, but enough that the gap between the positions feels meaningful to me. I am also feeling the strain of the process itself and trying to weigh the emotional and financial cost of continuing to fight versus just getting to an outcome and moving on. For those of you who have been through this, how did you decide whether to settle or go to trial? Did you feel like your attorney leaned too conservative, or was that ultimately the right call? Looking back, do you wish you had pushed harder or settled sooner? Were there any signals that helped you realize an offer was good enough? I'm not looking for legal advice, just perspective from people who have been through it. Appreciate any thoughts. The answer is yes, you should settle. And the reason why I know you should settle is your lawyer is telling you to settle. And when your lawyer is telling you to settle, you should listen to them because your lawyer understands the details of your case. Your lawyer understands the judges in your jurisdiction. Your lawyer has been doing this and knows what to expect. And if your lawyer is telling you to accept the offer, then you should accept the offer. Lawyers know better because their one, they're trained in the law, but two, their emotions are not tied up in this. Okay? It's really hard because you're feeling like, well, this isn't quite fair and I don't really know. And that's natural. It's completely natural because you feel like, no, it really should be the way that I want it to be. And this is what feels fair. Here's the thing. When you go to trial, even when you win, you don't win. It's really that simple. I have seen hundreds of cases go to trial, and I've seen it from beginning to end, and I've seen all different issues go to trial. And all I can tell you is that every time it never goes the way that the client thinks it's going to go. Like they'll win some things and lose some things. It's family law is a court of equity. So it's pretty much never one-sided. It's always this person gets this other person gets that. The judges tend to equalize things. So all the things that you want, you're not going to get every single one of them pretty much by default. Okay. And then even if you do win, even if you're the one in a million who wins everything that they want, which I've never seen happen, by the way, but let's say you are the one in a million that wins everything that they want. Okay. You don't win. You don't actually win because the money that you spend going to trial, the energy and the psychological aspect of it. And then you have gone all the way to trial. You've got to co-parent with him. And how are you going to have a constructive co-parenting relationship with someone where you both spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting each other? Like, it's really hard now to agree on parenting things and to have a peaceful relationship. That bit of money that you end up paying, that you feel like your ex isn't entitled to, that will be worth it to have a better relationship with your children's other parent. That is one of the most important things you can do, is have a good relationship with their other parent. If your lawyer is telling you to settle, then you should definitely settle. And I think that often we get the wrong idea from movies and from television. We get this idea that the courtroom is going to be this moment where you're going to be vindicated. And, our emotions are running the game, not our brain. And that's natural. Like, you're splitting everything up. You were married to this person. You thought you were going to be with them forever, and now it's over. And your emotions and your anger and your fear, that is 100% natural and normal. And I do not mean to belittle that, but you cannot trust your emotions right now. They're just too high. Your lawyer's job is to be rational for you, and you're paying your lawyer for advice. So listen to your lawyer. And, by the way, your lawyer makes a lot more money when you go to trial. Okay, they get a lot more money, and most of them only go to trial about once a year, but they love going to trial as a general rule. Every family law lawyer I know who does litigation loves going to trial, and I know a lot of them. Like, this is why they went to law school. It's just like, surgeons love operating on people. Lawyers love going to trial. It's why they do this, and they love finding the arguments. And when I was a legal researcher, I loved doing case law to find the arguments to help the lawyer to get everything ready for trial. Like, it's a big event in a law office in family law when you're going to trial. But here's the thing. I know several family law lawyers who got divorced themselves. And these are lawyers who are litigators. These are lawyers who go to trial themselves when their clients need it. And every single one of them, when they got divorced, did not go to trial, and they settled, and they overpaid their ex-spouse. They agreed to terms that were really not, that they didn't have to, because, they're lawyers. They know the law. They know that they could win if they took it to court, but they said, you know what? It's better just not to, because I've got to have a relationship with them for my kids. And I think that's really telling, because this is someone who, could represent themselves. It would cost them nothing. They do it all the time, so they know how to do it. It's not a big deal for them. But when it's them in their life, every single one of them that I know has chosen not to fight and has chosen to settle just to get the peace, because they are witness to every day. They see the cost of trial. They see the emotional cost. They see the psychological cost. They see the spiritual cost. And they say, I don't want that for me. I don't want that for my children. And they choose to settle. And that's just what I have observed. And I know a lot of lawyers, and that's something that I've observed. They will fight for you. And if you tell them you want to go to trial, they have to do it. You get to decide whether or not you settle. But I really think that if your lawyer is telling you to settle and to accept an offer, it really is wise to listen to them.
Thanks for listening to The Hopeful Divorce. If this episode was helpful to you, share it with someone who might need it, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. And as you deal with challenges of separation, divorce, and rebuilding your life, always remember the wise words that Christopher Robin told his friend Winnie the Pooh. You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep moving forward.